We've decided not to invite you for Christmas this year. My daughter-in-law Jennifer said it so casually over brunch, like she was choosing between appetizers. I just nodded. I didn't cry. I didn't protest. But inside, something shattered. For 5 years, I had been the invisible backbone of their perfect little life. While they smiled for holiday photos and hosted elegant dinner parties, I quietly covered the bills they couldn't afford. $3,200 every month for their mortgage, $1,200 a month for private school tuition, plus groceries, car repairs, catered Christmas dinners, all on my dime. They never knew it was me. I never told them. I let them believe David's failing investment firm had finally taken off. I did it out of love, out of loyalty, out of a naive hope that being useful meant being valued. But sitting in that fancy restaurant, hearing Jennifer explain that they just wanted something more intimate this year, I realized the harsh truth. I wasn't family. I was the funding. David couldn't even look at me. Jennifer smiled politely and promised, "We'll do something in January. Maybe." I forced a smile. I asked about the kids' soccer games. I praised her new highlights. I played my part. Then I went home, sat in my late husband's armchair and thought, they don't want me for Christmas. Maybe they don't need my money either. That night, I canceled the mortgage transfer. I pulled funding from the school. I called the caterer. And then I waited. 3 days later, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. After that brunch, I didn't cry. I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't ask why I'd been excluded from Christmas. I simply went home, made a cup of tea, and opened my laptop. My hands didn't tremble. My heart didn't break. Instead, a deep stillness settled over me, like the calm surface of a lake after a sudden storm. Still, quiet, cold. The online banking portal lit up in front of me. With one click, I canceled the $3,200 monthly mortgage transfer for David and Jennifer's house. With another, I revoked the $1,200 monthly tuition payment for my grandchildren's private school. Then I typed out a short, polite email to Jep's Catering, canceling the Christmas dinner for 30 people. I closed the laptop, and for the first time in years, I felt peace. No more secret sacrifices, no more pretending, no more funding a life I wasn't even welcome in. And then the phone started ringing. First came David. "Mom, the school called and said the tuition didn't go through. Is something wrong?" Not a single word about the brunch. No apology. No concern for me. Just confusion about the money. 2 hours later, Jennifer. "Martha, Jeb said you canceled the Christmas catering. There must be a mistake. Can you confirm this, please?" Can you confirm? Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Is something wrong?" Just panic. Panic about parties, appearances, money. The calls kept coming. 12 missed calls, 8 voicemails, each one more frantic than the last. And in none of them did anyone ask how I was doing. Sitting in Robert's old armchair with a glass of wine, I watched the December light shift through the curtains. The small Christmas tree I'd decorated alone sparkled gently in the corner. For years, I had let myself become the silent safety net, the one who always gave, always fixed, always paid. But now I wasn't a mother or a grandmother or a checkbook. I was Martha, and Martha was done being invisible. The calls didn't stop. David, Jennifer, the school, the caterer, all ringing back to back. Panic in their voices, urgency in their messages. But still, not one of them asked, "Are you okay?" Not one asked, "How are you feeling?" So I turned off my phone. That night, I sat in the quiet of my condo, cradling a cup of tea, staring at the small Christmas tree in the corner, its soft lights blinking like tiny reminders of everything I'd given up. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened the old folder in my desk drawer. Inside were 5 years' worth of bank statements, transaction records, wire transfers, all proof of how much I had given to keep David and Jennifer's life afloat. Over $275,000, more than half of my retirement savings. And for what? To be excluded? To be tolerated only when needed? To be everyone's silent solution, never anyone's priority. I closed the folder and looked out the window. The city lights twinkled, distant and cold. And in that moment, I made a decision. No more. The next morning, I called Richard, my late husband Robert's old friend and our longtime financial advisor. He answered on the second ring. "Martha, it's been a while. What can I do for you?" "I need to make some serious changes," I said, with a steadiness I hadn't felt in years. An hour later, I sat in his office as he reviewed the numbers, his brow tightening with each page. "Martha, you've drawn down nearly 60% of your retirement. At this rate, you'll run out in 4 years." "Then we restructure," I replied. "I'm done supporting them. I need to secure what's left for me." We spent the next 2 hours building a new plan. When I left his office, I felt like I could breathe again. On the way home, I passed a cozy little real estate office tucked between a cafe and a bookstore. A sudden pull made me stop. I stepped inside. "Hi," I told the young agent. "I'm looking for a small place by the sea. Nothing fancy, just peaceful." She smiled warmly, as if she understood more than I said out loud. "You're not the first," she said. "We get a lot of people starting over." She showed me listings in a quiet coastal town called Sea Pines, small cottages with porches and ocean views. And as I looked at the photos, I felt something flutter in my chest. Hope. Later that night, I turned my phone back on. The notifications poured in. One stood out. My sister Ellen. "David told me you've lost it," she said when I picked up. "Cutting them off. What's going on, Martha?" I invited her over. We sat across from each other like we were 12 again, whispering secrets in our childhood bedroom. And I told her everything. 5 years of invisible giving, of dwindling savings, of being forgotten bit by bit. Her expression softened. I had no idea. David always made it sound like he was doing great. Because he wanted to believe it. Ellen reached out, squeezed my hand. "You've always been the soft one. Maybe it's time to be steel instead." For the first time in years, I slept deeply. Not because someone else needed me, but because I needed me. And I had finally started choosing myself. 3 days after I cut off the money, a thick envelope arrived in the mail. It wasn't a Christmas card. It was a letter from a lawyer representing David and Jennifer. I sat at my kitchen table, tea in hand, and opened it slowly. My eyes skimmed the neatly typed lines, each sentence more surreal than the last. They were demanding that I resume financial support. Citing long-term dependency and implied responsibility, they argued that I had created an obligation to maintain their current standard of living. In short, my own son and his wife were trying to legally force me to keep paying their bills. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so ridiculous there was nothing left to do but laugh. I picked up the phone and called Richard, my financial advisor. "You're not going to believe this," I said. He listened as I read the letter aloud. When I finished, there was a pause. Then, "That's not how the law works, Martha. You're under zero legal obligation to fund your adult son's lifestyle." He promised to have his legal department issue a response. Don't worry, he said. They have no case, just entitlement. But the sting of betrayal, that was real. That night, I sat on my porch with a blanket around my shoulders, staring into the December sky. The stars above felt more loyal than the people I had once called family. Was this what it had come to? Years of quiet giving, of sacrificing my security, of never asking for thanks. And this was the response when I said no? A legal threat? It wasn't about money anymore. It was about control. About the fact that, for once, I had refused to play the role they assigned me. And now, they didn't know what to do with a version of me that wouldn't bend. The next day, I went through my home and began preparing for the move to Sea Pines. Every drawer I opened felt like shedding an old skin. Every box I packed was a declaration. I am not your safety net. I am not your victim. I am not your bank. Friends began to call after the news trickled out. Some confused. Why not just help them a little longer? Others angry on my behalf. You've done enough, Martha, way more than most would. Even Ellen, my sister, called again. They sent you a lawyer? She gasped. Are they insane? Entitled, I replied, not insane, just used to getting what they want. She was quiet for a moment. You're doing the right thing, you know. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I finally believed that. It wasn't just about refusing to fund their lifestyle anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity. This time, there would be no compromise, no caving, no guilt-driven forgiveness. I wasn't angry. I wasn't vengeful. I was done. And with every document I signed, every box I sealed, I stepped further away from who I had been and closer to the woman I was finally becoming. The knock came earlier than I expected. Firm, repetitive, unapologetic. I opened the door to find David and Jennifer standing on my front porch, their expressions tight, their posture rigid. Jennifer's arms were crossed like she'd been rehearsing a confrontation. David looked tired, angry, but with something else buried beneath the surface. Maybe fear? Mom, David said, pushing past me into the living room. What the hell is going on? I closed the door behind them and walked in calmly. No, hello? No, can we talk? I asked softly. We don't have time for pleasantries, Jennifer snapped. You've canceled everything. Our mortgage payment, the school tuition, the Christmas catering. What are we supposed to do now? I gestured to the sofa. Sit down. I'll show you. David stayed standing. We don't need a presentation. We need you to fix this. But I walked to my desk and retrieved the folder. The folder, thick, worn, filled with every receipt, every transfer, every financial lifeline I had quietly provided over the past 5 years. I handed it to David. He hesitated, then took it. With each page he flipped, the color drained from his face. Jennifer hovered over his shoulder, her mouth tightening with every number. $3,200 a month for 60 months. That's $192,000, I said, just for the mortgage. Add in tuition, catering, car repairs, groceries. The total is $276,000. Jennifer looked at me like I'd slapped her. No one asked you to do all that. I met her eyes, steady and calm. Yes, you did. Maybe not with those words, but every just this once, every can you cover it until next month, it was a request, and I answered every time. David sat down heavily, folder still in hand. Martha, Jennifer said sharply, you can't just cut us off. We have kids, a home, a life that depends on you. No, I said, you have a life that depends on you. I've enabled it for too long. That stops now. Silence fell. Then David asked, what about Emma and Jack? They didn't do anything wrong. My voice softened. No, they didn't. That's why I've set up education trusts, one for each of them. The funds will cover their tuition through college, paid directly to the schools, but it won't go through you. Jennifer bristled. You don't trust us? I don't trust what you've chosen to become, I replied, and I won't let your poor choices sabotage your children's future. David looked up, guilt flickering in his eyes. Thank you for doing that, for them. There are conditions, I added. They must maintain certain grades. The trusts cover only tuition. Everything else, uniforms, lunches, extracurriculars, that's on you. You're still their parents. Jennifer opened her mouth, then closed it again. For once, she had no comeback. You're welcome to visit me any time, I said, as family, not as dependents. They left quietly. David clutched the folder like it weighed more than money ever could. Jennifer didn't look back. I watched the door close behind them, my heart heavy but free. For the first time in years, I hadn't given in. And somehow, I knew. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. 3 months later, I woke up to the sound of waves. Not voices calling for help. Not a phone vibrating with urgent demands, just the ocean, steady and calm, like my breath. Sea pines had become home faster than I expected. The yellow cottage I had chosen with its wraparound porch and sea view windows welcomed me like a long-lost friend. Every morning, I sat on the porch swing with my tea, listening to the breeze through the palms and the rhythm of the tide rolling in and out like a lullaby for the soul. I joined a book club at the community center. Every Thursday, we sipped coffee and discussed novels, laughing more than analyzing. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. Watercolors this time, soft, forgiving. My neighbors became unexpected gifts. Harriet, a retired librarian who always had a mystery novel in her tote bag, and Ben, a widower who tended his garden with the same care I'd once poured into a family that didn't see me. But most importantly, I felt seen for who I was, not for what I gave. Then, one Saturday morning, my phone buzzed with a message. Emma, Grandma, can we still come visit this weekend? Dad said yes, but Mom's acting weird about it. I smiled. Of course, sweetheart. Can't wait to see you. In the months since I drew the line, things had begun to shift, not just for me, but for them too. David had taken a steady job with an established investment firm. He was no longer chasing clients, no longer pretending to succeed while drowning in debt. He told me on one call that it felt relieving to finally live within his means. Jennifer, surprisingly, had gone full-time at her real estate agency. No more part-time play at professionalism. She was working, consistently, quietly. We hadn't spoken much, but I could sense the edge in her tone had dulled. And the kids? Emma had joined her new public school's advanced literature program and was thriving. Jack, ever curious, had joined the robotics club and made new friends within weeks. They were adjusting. They were learning. And perhaps so was I. One afternoon, I hung my first finished painting on the cottage wall. It wasn't perfect. The perspective was a little off. The water was too blue, too cheerful. But it was mine. Every brushstroke was mine. Every mistake and triumph on that paper belonged to a woman who had finally remembered how to live for herself. David called me once a week now, not to ask for anything, but just to talk. Our conversations were still awkward at times, filled with pauses and unspoken guilt, but they were real. There was progress in the silence. There was healing in the space. And as I watched the sun dip into the Atlantic, casting golden light across the sea, I realized I hadn't lost my family. I had reclaimed myself. And in doing so, maybe, just maybe, I had given them permission to grow too. The doorbell rang 2 days earlier than expected, I opened it to find David standing there, alone, hands tucked into his coat pockets, eyes unsure. "I wanted to come early," he said, glancing around my porch. "Just the two of us." I stepped aside, letting him in. The cottage felt even warmer that day, sunlight spilling through the windows, the smell of cinnamon tea still lingering in the air. He looked around, taking it all in. "This place, it suits you." "Thank you," I replied. "It feels like mine." We sat in the cozy living room, my latest watercolor painting drying on an easel in the corner. David held his cup of tea like it might anchor him, and then he spoke. "I've been thinking a lot about everything, about what I let happen." He looked down at the floor, his voice thick. "I was angry at first. I felt like you'd abandoned us. But then I realized we abandoned you. We used you, Mom, and we never even said thank you." There it was. The apology I never thought I'd hear. Simple, honest, late, but real. "I'm sorry," he said again, "for the money, for the way we treated you, for forgetting you were more than what you gave us." I reached over and squeezed his hand. "Thank you, David. That means more than you know." That weekend, they all came: David, Jennifer, Emma, and Jack. Jennifer was stiff at first, her smile polite but distant. But when she saw how happy the children were, running barefoot on the beach, decorating my modest Christmas tree with handmade shells and painted stars, something in her shifted. That evening, as we cleared dishes on the porch under the soft glow of string lights, she turned to me. "I haven't properly thanked you for the education trusts." I raised an eyebrow, surprised. She continued. "It means a lot, knowing the kids have something secure, even if we're still figuring things out." I nodded. "They deserve it, and I'm glad I could give them that, on my terms." Jennifer hesitated. Then she added, almost in a whisper, "I was wrong about Christmas, about you." Not a perfect apology, but a start. We spent Christmas morning with cinnamon rolls, borrowed carols on a Bluetooth speaker, and Jack showing off his robotics project. No catering, no tuxedos, no tension, just laughter and mismatched mugs of cocoa. Emma helped me in the kitchen, humming quietly. At one point, she looked up and said, "Grandma, I like this Christmas more. It feels real." So did I. That night, after the children were tucked into the guest room, David and Jennifer joined me on the porch for a glass of wine. It was quiet, easy, no accusations, no expectations. Jennifer even smiled genuinely for the first time. David clinked his glass gently against mine. "Thank you for giving us a second chance." "I didn't give you a second chance," I said, smiling. "I gave myself one. You just found a way to meet me there." And that was the truth. This Christmas wasn't grand, expensive, or Instagram perfect, but it was peaceful, honest, and earned. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like an outsider in my own story.